Going live, and we are live. So, hopefully everything works. I'll be able to tell in 1 second. We still have a couple minutes to go, but is everything looking good on your end?
I can hear you loud and clearly. And
Alright.
I can see, yeah.
Just
Let me
asking.
let me just mute this sucker. And yeah, we're good.
Looks good to me. Alrighty.
Looks good to me.
All right, so we are live with whatever episode this is now, and for this week we have Matty from Headfonia, one of the writers there, and so we're going to be doing a bit of a background on who he is, what his review process is, what Headfonia is doing. For anyone unaware, Headfonia is they're a very I guess long-standing now well-known review site and blog for headphones and audiophiles and anything to do with headphones. And actually, for the longest time before I got into doing this stuff as well, I would always, go and check, whatever the latest articles were from Levin. We were actually just talking about that before. And so we're going to talk a little bit about, kind of the behind the scenes. And then we're also going to go through a bunch of viewer Q&As. So near the end, you guys leave all your questions and we'll try and get to them. We'll probably get asked a whole bunch of recommendations to compare different headphones and whatnot. So we'll definitely go through that. But in the meantime, let me just turn it over to you, Matty. Why don't you give a bit of introduction for those of you guys who, for those of the viewers who don't know who you are, and yeah, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Andrew. Well, mate, firstly, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
and
my pleasure.
Yeah, at the absolute blurst of times, it's such a funny time to be talking about anything right now. But as you and I were discussing before the stream started, we were so ready for this. I think anyone with who's into personal audio was just like, this is my time to shine right now. And if you can probably see what's sort of behind me over here, I was ready for this as well. So
Well stocked.
yeah. And also I've got, this is Potato, my cat. He's my co-editor over here, and he likes to he's probably the best system upgrade you can get. So yeah, I'm Matty. I'm on the review team at Headfonia.com. I've been with those guys for a little under 12 months, and I've been in the personal audio hobby for probably about 5 years now. I've always played music, always played guitar, woodwind, that kind of stuff. Massive music fan, and for some reason, maybe about 5 years ago, I happened to listen to a pair of Grado headphones. I'd always just listened to whatever came with my, iPhone or Samsung and that kind of stuff. And it was just like, I've been wasting my life. And I think I just saw this wooden pair of Grado headphones, which I still have up on my wall over here, the GH1. And yeah, I got the bug. And from there, I think it's just like any kind of hobby. Like, you're always looking for a little bit more, or something comes in a different kind of flavor. And there's the whole kind of like, gotta collect them all kind
Right.
of aspect to it as well. And I just think it's real fun just to explore the nuances between different things and different sounds, and sort of figuring out what you like. And I guess along the way, like, because you start to hear a lot of different things, you start to understand, I guess, sort of the nuances between them, have a lot of context. So you're sort of well positioned to be able to give people advice on I guess on the pros and cons of certain things. And who are they best for, or who are they not for? So I think, having spent a good 5 years in this hobby now, and having sold, bought, listened to, reviewed pretty much everything out there, like, you start to get a good sense of, I guess, so the comparative sort of differences between different sets of cans, different gear, different pairings. And it's just also a lot of fun. I like writing,
Yeah.
and I like giving advice, and I like talking about this stuff too.
Cool. Yeah, you touched on something that it made me think of Grados are often the entry or gateway for a lot of people
Mm,
into this hobby. Um,
yeah.
it's funny because I think, especially given the type of tuning that a lot of Grados end up having, for a lot of people, that's the first time they're hearing something that isn't the consumer based kind of stuff, where it's massive bass shelves that
Mm,
extend
mm,
way too far into the mids, and then they hear a Grado and they go, wow, there's so much clarity and detail, being a little bit more treble focused, and
yeah.
that experience is like at least for myself in a way. I mean, it wasn't with Grados, but that same kind of idea. It was the gateway into trying to then, as you're saying, identify all the small little differences for everything else as well. And I have to remind myself even now when I review headphones that
Mm,
are more entry level or a little bit less expensive, like the Sundara, which is on the table over there.
yeah.
Uh, you know, for us who are into the crazy high end stuff, that really is like only a little bit better. And it's noticeable enough where we care, but it's
Yeah.
hard to sometimes. Well, it's hard, but it's also part of the fun of it is communicating what it is that makes it so worthwhile for us, that we get excited about.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And look, a lot of people are just like they want to find the ultimate pair of headphones. Like they want to go straight to end game. Like what's going to do absolutely everything for me? And you know
Yeah.
what? If I'd gone straight to, I don't know, a pair of Stellia like these guys up here straight away, I would have missed out on 98% of the fun. Like
Yeah.
honestly, like I think mid-fi is like really, you know, underrated. Like I think there are so many. Like you can get an incredible musical experience for not a lot of outlay, and I would honestly say spend a lot more time trying different things in sort of lower tier kind of hi-fi before you start sort of worrying about end game and what am I missing out on. Just chill, enjoy, hear different things, learn about it, figure out what you like, figure out what you don't like.
Well, that figuring out process is essential as well, because it is something where you can go down the path for any type of sound, whether it's warmer, brighter, harmon
Mm,
neutral, whatever,
yeah.
at any different tier. And it's nice to have that figured out before you go into endgame. I
Mm,
mean, as you're saying, like a lot of people do like to just jump to endgame, and maybe that makes more sense financially if you're going to end up there anyways. But
yeah.
it is still
Yeah.
helpful to have that stuff figured out a little bit before you end up going there, so at least you know that when you are getting towards that,
Yeah.
you know, Focal Stellia or whatever ends up being, that
Yeah.
it's the right trajectory. It's going down the right path of the
Yeah,
type of sound that
totally.
you want.
It's also very relieving to find out what you don't like,
Yeah,
fairly early on.
yeah,
Like for example, I'm not an enormous fan of the full-size LCD Odysseys. I can certainly appreciate their technicalities,
right.
what they're good at. I think it's important, as a reviewer, to be able to sort of, understand those nuances, give advice in terms of what they're good at, give advice to people who they might be, useful for. But, in terms of my personal flavor, if I'm just chilling out, kicking back, listening to tunes, they're too dark for me. Like I generally
Interesting.
don't. Yeah.
Interesting. Have you tried some of
Um,
the LCD4 and like the crazy high end ones?
Two, three, four, 4Z, everything.
Interesting.
I owned a pair of LCDX for a while. Like given that they were probably the most neutral tuned of them all, and this might be slightly controversial, but the Mobius, they're actually my favorite tuning on an Odyssey headphone.
You're not the first person to have said that, actually.
I know, I know.
Yeah.
Um,
uh,
I just think they're actually genuinely they're a great package.
yeah, I
The
still need to
Mobius.
review that one at some point. I think that's going to be in the near future, but everybody seems to say it's one of the better ones out there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and look, I think they were probably the most interesting thing that happened in I guess kind of high-end personal audio for a long, long time. I remember seeing the Kickstarter and I jumped in on the ground floor of that sucker because I was like, this seems like a genuinely great proposition, not because I'm like a huge gamer or anything, but just like
right.
the tech proposition and sort of the ability to change the firmware and the tuning, and it's really interesting.
Now you got I mean, right now we got the Hi-Fi Mandeva coming out, which is another wireless
Mm,
planar, and it
yep.
seems like wireless planars are becoming more and more common, even in the last year. because now
Yep.
there's the drop Panda as well. Um, is
Which are
wireless
also
something
good.
that you value? Like, is that something that you that idea of I mean, maybe not going outside and running around,
Mm,
with headphones on, but like at home, especially in isolation days, is
yeah, yeah.
wireless something that really you see the benefit?
Look, I certainly do. Look, I'm a bit of a purist. If I'm going to be taking the time to sit down and sort of listen deliberately,
Right.
you know, wired all the way. I probably the same reason why I still change the gears in my car, and while I, bother with the expense and inconvenience of vinyl as well. Like I think there's something to be said for the, ceremony, the purity of, listening that kind of way. But look, having said that,
So, were
you know,
you drawn to vinyl because of the expense and inconvenience?
oh yeah, totally. Yeah, fuck money, right?
uh,
No, look, I think probably just because I just love kind of like the nuances, the ceremony, the album artwork,
right.
like, and if you're going to the trouble of playing an album start to finish, I listen to pretty much only to albums only. I don't really do sort of playlists, that kind of thing. You're going to listen to them
Yeah, I'm with
you know
you.
with a lot more kind of detail. But
I,
just
I
to go
I
back,
liked. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
I was going to say, just to go back to your question around wireless. Um, we're almost there at the point where you're not really losing much by way of fidelity. I mean, using the Sony LDAC codec, where within a bee's dick of
Hmm.
being completely lossless, and if I'm going to be listening, not 100% critically, but just for enjoyment, like that's it's almost apples and apples. So yes, I think wireless are becoming, you know, completely an unattainable proposition in terms of, highly faithful listening. And I've got to say, like, if I'm cooking in the kitchen, which I'm doing a lot of at the moment, as you could probably imagine, um,
Hmm.
they're just really great to have, just, listening while I'm sort of, running between the fridge and the cupboard and trying to keep a couple of cats
Right.
off the bench, and that's that sort of thing. So yeah, wireless is great. I had a pair of the pre-production Panda models in a couple of months back, and they were genuinely really impressive.
Hmm.
Um, Interestingly, in wired mode as well. I thought they were
Right.
just a great pair of wired all-rounder closed-back headphones.
Yeah. Um, you said something earlier about listening deliberately.
Yeah,
I love that distinction because, it's it is something where, I mean, as a reviewer, like, you're not necessarily, listening to music to enjoy it as much as you're listening to music for the nuances of the headphone that you're trying to
mm,
isolate. But when you are sitting down to listen to music just because, and have that listening deliberately for the music, not deliberately for the
yeah,
headphones, I
yeah,
still think that is a distinctly different process, especially when you do have the whole sit down, have an album in front of you and listen to the whole album
yeah,
kind of, if you have the opportunity for that kind of session, as
yep,
opposed to, again, you were saying with the playlist thing, and it's just on in the background, and you're not actually even appreciating the details of and the technicalities of the equipment that makes us audiophiles.
yeah. I agree.
uh, yeah,
It's all about music at the end of the day, right?
yeah, yeah.
I certainly don't enjoy listening to sign sweeps or anything like that.
I made that joke the other day. Yeah.
They have their time, they have their place.
Yes. Yes.
But the first thing I'll do when I get a pair of cans in the house is that I'll just throw them on my head, and I'll just listen to music for 2 weeks straight. I won't write notes down. I won't start comparing, changing between amps in like a real hurry. I won't put them side by side with something else and get out my AB switcher. I will just sit down and I would just like, what's it like to listen to the music that I love with them? And I think that's
Right.
really, really important, because at the end of the day, that's what people are going to use them for. And for me, yes, I do like to go through the different kind of technical aspects of a pair of headphones and like their build and their comfort and so forth. But total product experience for me is, I think, something that's, very hard to kind of sum up in like a score out of 10, or, to, talk about in any kind of quantifiable way. But what do they like to live with? What's it like
Hmm.
to, enjoy the kind of music you like to listen to. And I think the most important KPI of a headphone is, does it make me want to listen to, just get them out of the box or take them off the wall and listen to music all the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's that's the most important thing. Does it make you just want to sit down and just like dig out your music that's there in your collection and discover new stuff as well?
That's the other like main benefit to comfortable headphones or lighter headphones over heavier ones, or
Yeah.
even just nice looking headphones.
Do
you
they-
sit If you sit
Totally.
down with the RAL Requisite, the SR1A, and you go, now I'm gonna have to figure out how to do this or something like
Oh,
that, right?
totally. I think one of the greatest things a pair of headphones can do is disappear on your head. Do you forget that you're wearing them? Do they just like completely just sort of make you disappear into music? And there's this one pair of headphones that I keep coming back to time and time again. And I made a bold call a couple of days ago talking to my friend Matt, who's he's one of the mods at r/headphones, and he's a review at StereoNet. Just the HD 600 by Sennheiser.
Yeah.
I can just throw them on, and I'll just disappear into an album immediately. Nothing will jump out. I won't be sort of reminded of any particular frequency response. Voices sound like voices. Instruments sound like instruments.
Yeah.
And
That-
they're comfortable.
Yeah. Well, so that in my opinion is the best of the 6 whatever series. It's the HD 600. Just for my personal taste, but I do know what you mean, and I find that even with like my go-to headphones right now, the ZMF Verite, even with the Verite, I find I there are definitely times when I go, I know I want to have a different headphone for this type of music that I'm listening to, or I'm in a mood for a different headphone. So I can, if it's not something that is working with the music that I want at that moment because of whatever, maybe I was listening to something else during the course of the day and I wanted something, especially as a reviewer, getting something that gets you back to normal so that you're now enjoying the music again is super important. I wanted to ask you. Sorry, window's open. I'm just going to close this.
Okay.
Glad I didn't fall over there. That would have been embarrassing. So I wanted to ask you about your setup in the back with all of the. Yeah, I mean, why don't you just take us through all of what's there?
Yeah, sure thing. So the hanger itself. So these are it's called a SCADIS, SKADIS, something like that, from IKEA. They're just multi-purpose, things that you see on like the wall in like a garage where people hang their tools and that kind of thing. I just had this harebrained idea that I could sort of build some kind of like headphone stacking situation, and sure enough, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah,
and that's kind
it's
of
really
where
cool.
look, and as I was saying before, like if you can't, if your headphones aren't within arm's reach, you're not going to listen to your music. So this is all about just sort of me being able to like grab them, chuck them on, enjoy music from the get-go. So that's the SCADIS. So top left, we've got the Beyerdynamic T1s, Gen 1. So the OG version with the wired connectors.
Back when they were the only alternative to the HD 800.
HD 800. Yeah.
I remember that.
I love the HD 800 as well. Talking about that comfort thing, I just find they're just too big and floaty for me. Like if I was to lean back in my chair, they just they'll take you out of the zone because they will want to fall off your head. The T1s are just like a velvet glove. They're comfortable, they're airy, they're spacious. They just do detail like nothing else. I find they're pretty gentle as well. I'm not treble sensitive, so they're just a great Goldilocks pair of headphones for me. Immediately below those, so that's the ZMF Icon. I got those probably about 18 months ago. I heard them and what's their dynamic brother? The starts with A. It'll come to me.
The open one, the Auteur.
Atticus.
Oh, the Atticus. Yeah.
I had the chance to listen to them back to back at a meet when you could meet people in real life. Um,
I remember those days.
yeah, about 18 months ago, I had a good chance to, back to back sort of go through the pros and cons. And the icon for me at the time was my absolute Goldilocks headphones that just happened to be closed back. So I got this pair directly from ZMF. They're made out of a oxidized cherry wood. Um, yeah,
What's it like getting the ZMF headphones to Australia? Just for anybody who wasn't aware, he's in Australia.
g'day. Mate, not too much trouble, to be honest. I think anyone who's had the pleasure of dealing directly with Zach from ZMF will certainly know that customer service there is absolutely A1.
Yeah.
And it was great. I mean, obviously they're handmade. It's you're working with an artisan craftsman who doesn't just have them sort of sitting there just chugging off an assembly line. So you've got to wait for them. You've got to put in your order. He keeps your expectations managed around how they're going. I think at the time I ordered them sort of November or December, and he was telling me that I was going to get them sometime in late January, which I was pretty bummed about because that's our summer holiday break here in Australia. And I think they arrived 2 days just before our work broke up for Christmas, and that was just the nicest surprise to see this enormous package with a Pelican case just sitting there on my desk at work. It was really cool. It was really cool.
Yeah.
Over to the right. So in the middle on the top there are the Grado PS500E. So that's the smallest member of the, I think they called it Professional series. So they're made out of both aluminium and they've got a mahogany core on the inside. And and they are rocking a pair of leather pads from a small New Zealand outfit called BeautifulAudio.biz. So they're made out of leather and sheepskin. And they are just the most incredible comfort upgrade for them.
Cool, yeah.
That's really, really cool. I find with Grados, the L Cush is like the smaller one. They hurt my ears after listening all day. The G Cush, the big salad bowl pads, they change the sound. Not necessarily for the better, but they do change the sound. These beautiful audio pads, they do come in a larger version now. They're just in like 100% comfort upgrade. They look sick and they sound great too. Next door to those is, speaking of Grado salad bowls, is the Grado white headphone. So that was the limited release version that they brought out last year, which was inspired by the Beatles' White Album.
Right.
I put out a review article going back a couple of months now on Headfonia. So if anyone's interested in kind of some comprehensive thoughts, I left them up there. Net, they are... For the collector, for the Grado collector, I think if you're in the market for a pair of Grados, that would be interesting, but maybe not an ideal first place to start. They were a little more treble oriented than other Grados that I've tried, but if you're a Beatles head or if you're a Grado head, there's certainly an interesting one to add to the collection. Top right over here, Matty 99 Classics. I remember when they first came out, and I don't think they make this silver and maple model anymore. I just thought they were one of the most interesting looking pair of headphones. Reviews were sort of coming out when they were first released that, hey, these things actually sound good, and not just for a good looking pair of headphones, but they actually sound good for small...
which pads are on those? Is it like the latest pads, or when did you get the...
Mine came with the OG pads, so the very, very first release, which have a slightly sort of larger sort of opening for your ear hole, for your ears. And
that was the most balanced sound as well, if I remember correctly.
That's right. Yeah. I heard some of the noir versions that came out a little later with the different pads, and they did change the sound, and not for the better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I saw on the headphones subreddit a couple of weeks ago, some dude found a pair of like this just random set of pads from, I don't know, Amazon or eBay or something, and they just look like a genuine comfort upgrade. You know what? They have completely changed this pair of headphones, and
really
probably for the better for me. They're kind of like a hybrid, kind of like synthetic velour.
Cool.
And they're now sort of they're definitely semi-open now. But that boomy bass has disappeared. They're feeling a lot more kind of airy and spacious, probably a more balanced sound. I think people who kind of like them for that sort of thick, I won't say muddy, but that sort of that thick, punchy kind of warm, dynamic sound might not like it. I'm more inclined to listen to them now with these pads on.
It's funny that I wrote an article a while ago about headphones for work and the like not necessarily home office, but just work in general, which included both home office and at the office. And the 99 Classic were on that list for me, just because I couldn't actually think of anything that would be at around that price range for a closeback headphone that actually sounded really good and didn't look crazy. Right? There's a lot of headphones that look pretty crazy, and you wouldn't want to go to the office with them. But I remember I got a lot of crap for saying that the 99 Classics were actually good. But I think it's a lot of people haven't heard it with the original pads, and they think people are used to, or there's an expectation that it would be this sort of boomier, larger bass kind of thing that happens with the Noir. But if you do pad swap with them, there's a lot of potential there. So
definitely,
it's cool that you've done that.
I'm trying to find these pads so I can leave a link to
them.
Yeah.
But, if you find them, I can just leave them in the description afterwards.
Yeah, cool. It's made them a lot more viable, in my opinion. Right. Not necessarily for portable, because their isolation's gone from a 7 out of 10 to like a 4 out of 10. But interesting all the same. Downstairs from those guys, Sennheiser 650 HD 650. Probably the most venerable and respected audiophile headphone of all time. I actually have my pair autographed by Axel Grell.
That's the thing to do these days.
Yeah. So I had the pleasure of meeting him in at Sennheiser's HQ near Hanover in Germany 3 years ago now, and spent a couple of days just talking with his team, touring the factory, that kind of stuff.
Cool.
And he's a real good dude. He's one of the nicest. He was an absolute gentleman and just a font of knowledge, as you can imagine. Having, I mean, his hits include the 580, the 600, the 650, the 800, the 800S, etc.
I spoke to him at Can Jam for about 15 minutes, but my camera stopped recording because the battery died like halfway through, so I couldn't actually use the interview. But he was, he's obviously he's no longer with Sennheiser. I think he's now just
freelancing,
consulting on. But he seemed like a very enthusiastic guy about all of this stuff. So
and I remember like he was just telling me that he learned English from listening to Frank Zappa.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think I actually got into Frank Zappa after that conversation. Frank Zappa is really well produced music and sounds sick on headphones.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out.
It's really good. Actually, one of my go-to test tracks is Frank Zappa. It's off his album Apostrophe. That's that's probably good starting place, that album. Yeah. What else do we have? Speaking of meeting the inventor, Dan Clark Audio, formerly known as Mr. Speakers, the Aeon Opens. I was in San Diego start of last year.
Aeon Opens, right?
The original version, and I dropped by the Mr. Speakers HQ there in San Diego and met his team and Dan himself, stand-up guy, and I just really fell in love with just like this very easy to like sound that the Aeon Opens have.
Yeah, definitely.
Look, they're just warm. They just like, you can just kick back and just like dig any type of genre with those. You can change the sound signature with the inserts. I actually probably prefer them without any inserts because I like it a little spicier up top on the most part.
They do have a little bit of 8K hertz, a little zing.
I'm okay with that. I don't know. Maybe I trashed my hearing in standing in front of a guitar out 2 years, but I'm really okay with that.
I can understand it with that one specifically as well, because in some ways it complements the kind of warmer nature of the rest of the frequency response a little bit. So it's nice to have a little bit of that up there as well. So sorry, you're saying.
So that's the opens. Next sort of those in the bottom middle is the HD 600, um, which I think probably get more head time than anything else at the moment. You can't really see my desktop setup, which is here in front of me, but I've got Bottlehead Kraken Speedball, which I've built. I've got a Hageman Audio Tuber speed amp as well, and I've got my reference solid state amp here, which is the Questal CMA 600i, and I run the 600s balanced off the
Right.
Questal for the most part.
Cool.
And then to round it out, I've got Grado GH1s sitting here on my Omega stands, which are currently rocking the G-Cush pads, a headband upgrade from Turbulent Labs, which is just looks sick, is mega comfortable. I've got a review pair here on the metal pipe stand, which is the new Audio Technica. I'm gonna get this wrong. ATH-AWKT.
Those are
Which
the really nice looking ones that showed up on Reddit recently.
the real looking nice ones on
Yeah.
Reddit.
Yeah.
I think I dropped a post on those last week.
Oh, that was you. Okay.
Yeah. Hang on, I might just see if I can. I can't reach them without sort of unplugging and fucking this up somehow.
Yeah.
Made out of a rare striped ebony wood. They look sick. Look, they're one of the headphones that aren't my jam. I can really appreciate what they're good at and their technicalities, and I think it's important when reviewing to talk through what they're really good at. Talk about what they're not good at, why they're not necessarily for me, but
Mhm.
if they might be for you. But I think, like anything else, always got to listen to them yourself. I think reviews can be helpful context to help sort of steer you towards an informed decision. But at the end of the day, your ears know best. Your head knows best in terms of the way it's shaped and the way that comfort might work.
Mhm.
So I think reviews are important because they give you context, and I think reviewers have context because they've listened to a bunch of stuff, so they can help sort of compare things in relation to one another. But yeah, look, they were really great at classical music, really great at sort of instrumental and sort of jazz and that kind of thing. Kind of a bit lean, a little dry sounding, not great for EDM, hip hop if that's your jam. But
It's
yeah,
funny.
just like wonderful craftsmanship though.
Yeah. I was just recently having a bit of a dispute there with Sean Olive on Twitter about whether or not it makes sense to have different headphones for different genres, or like should headphones strive for one perfect type of sound, or should there be we want this one for classical, or we want this one for EDM, or whatever, that kind of thing. What's your take on that kind of stuff?
I think you know what, like, you could drive a Toyota Corolla all day, every day, right? Because it's going to not break down, get you there, and keep you safe in a crash. Blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate different takes on the way to bring music to life. It's
Mm-hmm.
never going to be flat. It's never going to be like completely sort of true to what went into the mic in the recording booth.
Mm-hmm.
And different manufacturers have different takes on a house sound. I like hearing different takes on a house sound. I like changing things up. I like sort of reminding myself of that there are different ways to do things.
Right.
Also in different moods, right? Like at the end of the day, after like sitting through a bunch of meetings and whatnot, I like to kick back. Like I'll reach for my HD 650s. I'll lean for those Aeon Opens, and I want kind of more of a chill out kind of experience. If I want something that's going to be like super exciting, like maybe it's early in the morning, or or if I'm sitting down having a beer, like I'll reach for the Grados. Or if I just want to absolutely treat myself, Stellias. Like they are just the most decadent sounding headphones. Everything sounds good. Everything sounds big. Everything sounds punchy. It's like this enormous kind of W, and it's like that it's not neutral. That it's like everything is 11 on them. But in such a fun way.
I had that same experience with the old Hi-Fi Man HE500, where
Mm,
I got the feeling like, okay, this could be considered neutral, but it's like everything is enhanced somehow.
yeah, yeah.
But I wanted to get I want to get back to that, but just on what you were just saying there about, wanting to relax or treat yourself, or depending on the mood or whatever.
Mm,
It's amazing how much the, I guess, synergy between the music that you're listening to and the equipment that you're listening to and the mood that you're in, or
definitely.
that combination, and how all that stuff works together. It's amazing
Mm,
how much of an effect that can have on the enjoyment of that.
yeah,
And that's one of the reasons why, like, I obviously, planted the flag a little bit firmly there in the debate I was having, that, there is a reason to, enjoy one type of headphone for one type of music. Maybe not specifically genre dependent, but it
yeah,
could certainly be, recording dependent, album dependent, especially
totally.
because they don't all use the same mastering, and they don't all,
Yeah.
not everybody's using the same microphones, and there's enough variance there. And maybe you
One,
want your Bob Dylan to sound one way, and you want your well, in this
yeah,
case, maybe Frank Zappa to sound a different way, right? So
yeah.
I think there
It's
is room
it's
for that.
it's also there's nothing quite so interesting or disappointing as finding out that music that you used to love was like mastered really sucky. Like
uh,
it's so disappointing.
yes, but actually, so I love doing this, especially lately. I love doing this thing where I'll go through, music that I used to listen to that I don't really listen to anymore. Like, my preferences have changed, my tastes have changed, but I love going
Mm,
back to a lot of those old ones that I used to listen to when I was younger, with, high end equipment now, because the
mm,
stuff that I was listening to back then, I didn't have nice headphones. I wouldn't have had nice speakers. I would have had whatever is, the default stuff that you have, right, the consumer stuff.
yeah,
And now, when going back and listening to that stuff, it's like, wow, I did not know that this was in this mix, and I love that experience of just rediscovering all that stuff. It's great.
totally. It is. It really is.
um,
Um,
but yeah, so I guess you've gone through all the headphones there, but you
mhm,
effectively then have a literal wall of fame. If you had
yeah.
to rank them, what would be well, maybe not rank all of them, but, like, let's say your top
Ooh.
three of all of your headphones. What would they be?
Top three. Well, it's I have to sort of put myself slightly at arm's length from myself, which is a very abstract kind of thing to do because, like, some of them have, emotional things
Of
can
course,
attach to
yeah,
them.
yeah.
Some of them, I, have good experiences from, meeting the manufacturer or the inventor of them, all those sorts of things. But okay, let's just say, desert island situation. I have to take three pairs of headphones. I am going to go with the HD 600. I'll go with the Stellia, and let's. Oh God, which of my children do I leave behind? Um, and I'll probably go with the PS 500E with those pads on.
That's a nice combination of different,
Mm,
tonalities and frequency response as well.
yeah, yeah,
Kind of
yeah.
spans the
But look, I'm also not afraid of EQ, so that
cool.
is another way to introduce flavor and nuance to the situation as well.
Using, like, equalizer APO.
I will sort of do a parametric EQ setting in Rune.
Rune. Yeah, I've been doing
Yeah,
that lately. It's such a, like, powerful tool. Like, the way that they have it set up, it's so useful.
it's
I'm
yeah.
used to using equalizer APO, which gives you, like, you have more flexibility there, but I
hmm
find
hmm
it's just so much better in Rune. Just because you're not gonna screw anything up, or, like,
No, that's right.
yeah, you
Um,
have less chance of screwing something up, right? Your Q
yeah.
values are a little wider.
Mm,
It's
mm.
really nice.
I'll always review un-EQ'd because you
Hmm.
need to sort of work out what it's going to sound like
Oh,
out of the box.
definitely,
And
yeah.
I guess for the most part, people don't tend to EQ. I'll only use sort of EQ if I'm sort of listening for myself or just out of interest. The interesting thing with Rune is that sometimes you forget that you have an EQ or
Yes.
setting
Or for different
applied to a bit,
headphones.
or to a different
Yeah.
DAC.
Yeah.
Actually, Rune is a really useful tool for reviewing DACs. So I've got the topping E30 here at the moment. And I also have the Asgard 3 multi-bit here at the moment. And I think I had both sort of joined to Rune at the same time. I'd set them up as a group. And then I had the E30 running to the analog
Yes.
in on the Asgard 3. So I was able to just quickly flick the settings switch on the Asgard to change between DACs, which is not as fun or as, night and day difference as you could imagine. And
Yeah.
look, reviewing DACs is a really hard thing to do.
Yes. I
You
tried to
have
do some blind testing recently, and it's a challenge.
I did see your blind testing
Yeah.
test. It is a
I've got a
challenge.
Switch now, so hopefully it'll be able to.
I have the Switch as well.
Yeah.
So Rune is helpful for that. I've got like a $10 thing off AliExpress, which is like just the most helpful tool I have in my arsenal for reviewing, which is just like an ABCD tester. But to listen to DAX, I think you need to spend what's it like in the long term? What is the emotional connection it makes to you with music? What are some of the differences that you can, having spent time with it and living with it, what does that DAC do? So I think DACs do two things. One, is it able to connect to your source and to other stuff easily and help you play music? And in the longer term, what are the slight nuances in terms of kind of the emotional benefit from it? I think you can spend not much money at all and have a perfectly competent DAC, and you know what, spend your money elsewhere. Honestly, the rest just comes down to that final 2%, and does it plug into everything else the way you need it to?
Yeah, I tend to. Well, there's a couple of things on DAX for me that I've come to realize after doing this for now the amount of time that I have, and it's that like within the mid-range for price really is not that much difference. It's the differences that are there, I don't think outweigh whatever features or other characteristics that you may require. As you're saying, like the two pieces, that one piece of, does it work with the rest of your stuff that you want, the stuff that you want it to work with? That I think is just so much more important in the mid-level stuff. There are I having had a chance now to like try some of the crazy high-end stuff for DAX, that's where this stuff starts to go, like, okay, those differences are no longer subtle. They're now like to the point where pretty much anybody would be able to tell the difference. So especially at shows, and going to shows and trying out all of the crazy stuff that they have there, even though they're not ideal environments, getting a sense of some of that stuff is pretty interesting. But the other thing I wanted to mention with DAX that I noticed as a result of doing the blind testing was that when I'm actually evaluating the sound for a DAC, you can try and identify like 10 different you can listen specifically for 10 different things, or however many different things in a DAC, and one of those things could be different, right? So whether it's treble, whether it's mids, whether it's detail, whether it's texture, whether it's stage, like all these different things could be a little bit different. And maybe it's just one of those things that's different, but if you're doing a blind test, you're not necessarily listening specifically for that one thing. So you may be able to pick up a difference if you do longer sessions over a longer period of time, where you become intimately familiar with the way that one DAC sounds versus the way that another DAC sounds, because you'll have the time to be able to actually go down the list of the 10 different things. But in a blind test where everything is combined, nothing really jumps out at you all that immediately, right? So I almost feel like that's the reason why the blind testing thing is I don't want to say overhyped, but you know what I mean? It's overvalued a little bit, I think. When, as you're saying, you need to spend more time with it to actually be able to fully understand which of those 10 different or however many different things is the difference.
Yeah, that's right. And look, I think, there's a time and a place, and I do tend to do some A/B sort of blind testing between DACs because I think it's important to for readers, but I don't find it's always that useful because you're comparing a particular part of a particular song at that point in time. I think what I'm looking to sort of, I guess, give advice on is what is the end-to-end product experience like if you are to buy this, say, over something else, and what can you expect in the long term versus other things. Yes, there are technicalities that need to be discussed, But for me, it sort of it comes down to how is it going to help you have a relationship with music, and what's it like to live with for the most part.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So that, I mean, it's a good segue to the some questions that I have for you about like
Mm.
the technical stuff.
Mhm.
Where do you what's your take on measurements, frequency response, and for at least for headphones, but then also
Mhm.
potentially some of the testing that people are doing with source equipment? Like,
Yeah,
where do you kind of see that stuff?
I think it's incredibly useful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not something I don't have the equipment here. I don't really have the time, and like other things being equal, I probably wouldn't do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
There are, I guess, sort of, there's some great resources out there online for tests, and like people can certainly dig into that. Um, I don't think that they're always a useful indicator of the things that I just mentioned: total
Mm-hmm.
product experience, and like what's the emotional connection that it gives you to music. Um, I think just to go back to the car analogy I had earlier, I might not be able to tell you what the cornering ability of this car is like in terms of G forces, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a dyno to be able to tell you what the horsepower is, but I can certainly tell you what the acceleration abilities are like in
What
with
it what it feels like to drive it.
compared to everything else that I have.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be far more useful for, I guess, sort of certainly my readers than if I was to do some like ham-fisted attempt at trying to piece together the ears or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question, I think they're incredibly useful. I think that if you were to look at something as a quick reference, as part of that context that you're trying to build to steer you towards a decision, looking at a frequency response chart can help steer you in the right direction.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's. I think there's definitely there's a group of people who uh, might think that looking at a frequency response graph is all you need to know in order to be able to
Hmm.
make an assessment or a judgment
Hmm.
about the way that a headphone's going to sound. But I think in reality you have to. It there is no substitute for actually listening to it. Like you have to actually try it out.
No, there's not. And look, while they might sort of give you a relative indicator of what parts of the frequency response are, elevated or sort of dipped or what have you, they won't give you they can't tell you like the ability of the transducer to, I guess, sort of,
Oh yeah.
resolve, move, do things quickly, give you
Yeah.
sort of that realistic sense of decay, like sound good, make instruments sound like instruments.
Or bad
Um,
if it's bad, right?
or bad. Like sometimes you
Yeah.
just listen to something and you're just like, you know what? Like, yeah, it's doing some things technically really well, but it just doesn't sound like music to me.
Actually, on that subject, how do you
Mm.
handle when you don't like something?
How do I okay. I think it's important to talk things in terms of its relative merits.
Right.
Um, also, it's like looking at it like a job. What's there's always something out there for someone, just
Mm-hmm.
in terms of that price point or like a particular taste or an application for something. You need to assess something on its merits, or if it's just, or sometimes there aren't any merits in particular fields. So um, I just have to be honest in terms of what is something is able to perform like in context to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
um, Sometimes I don't like things. Sometimes I need to talk about why you might not like that either.
Mm-hmm. Is it? Do you also? I mean, find that there's a sense of almost like responsibility if something is either in terms of like if you say something sounds a certain
Mm,
way, then you
yeah.
have to feel like it needs to actually be like that, and everybody needs to hear it that way. But then also on the flip side, if something is just not sounding good,
Mm.
there are things that you can't gloss over because it needs to factor into a recommendation, whether or not it's going to be a recommendation.
There are, and look, sometimes like there's been a couple of examples in the last 12 months that I'm like, that is just entirely sibilant and unlistenable.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for me. If I can hear it, you should hear that too, and that's just not great. That's not a great
Yeah.
experience, and you need to know about that. Additionally, if something's not comfortable, You need to know
Right.
about that. Like for me, these Audio Technicas here that I published a review on last week. Anytime I would move or swivel in my chair, and we're talking like 3,000 Australian dollars or whatever, the cable just like makes noise, so much noise, like it would brush up and down, and also like if you tapped it, like it would just resonate in these wooden cups, and there's nothing like that to take you out of the experience like immediately, and people need to know about that. Like if you're going to spend a lot of money on it, and you know, certain brands have like massive fanboys out there, and if you publish something that sort of, you know, disappoints them, or sort of, you know, like, you know, like a lot of people get sort of, you know, purchase, you know, post-purchase something or other.
They want the money that they spent to be spent well.
Yeah, and you know, so people often take exception to your, I guess, sort of take on something. Like, you know, they might not sort of believe it or sort of hear it that way, but you know, when you're talking subjectivities, that's bound to pop up.
The other thing too is that not everybody, we were talking about this in the previous one that we did, but not everybody's had the breadth of experience that with all the various different pieces of equipment that the reviewers have. So not everybody has the opportunity to compare it directly with something else that falls in the same price or something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
but I think just to go back to that point about comparison, I genuinely don't like comparing things from memory, because you're not listening to something, you're remembering the last time you remembered what that sounded like. So while you'll have kind of like an idea or kind of like a sense of what something was like, and you can kind of compare to that experience, like if someone were to say, what was this like compared to that? I'm like, sorry, I can't tell you because I don't have them side by side to be able to tell you that. Yeah.
I think you could probably do like a general, this one's probably a bit brighter, or, you know, this one's more, you can give the general descriptions of how you remembered that, with the caveat that you don't have them side by side, so you can't actually
totally. I like, you know, looking at this Audio Technica close back, I don't have the ATH ADX 5000 with me, but one thing I did mention was that
right here.
you
can, if you can see it. Yeah.
That was my jam. I really, really, really enjoyed it. So while I couldn't listen to them side by side, I was able to say with confidence that I didn't have the same kind of emotional connection or, I guess, kind of sense of, you know, I wasn't as impressed versus the ADX 5000, which I really need to get onto my wall now that I think about it.
It's a headphone that I love it. It's something like, in a lot of, like, let's say, flavor of the month audiophile conversations, the ADX 5000 doesn't come up, I think, as much as it probably should.
No.
You know?
It's not cheap. Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
Like, right up. It's not as wide soundstage wise as the HD 800S, which is its natural kind of open back dynamic competitor. I kind of dug its balance a little more than the Sennheiser.
Oh yeah, it's far more less 6K peak.
Definitely. But the thing that just impressed me was the air. Like, it just sort of just balanced that treble so well. Like, it never got grating, it was never kind of too hot, never kind of sibilant. It was just
it's just
hang on.
It's got the cloud filter going on.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I love it.
What are you listening to at the moment? What's coming up on the review pipeline
for headphones? Oh boy. So actually, ZMF. So Zach from ZMF recently sent me another set of pads. Two different sets of pads for the Verite, and so that puts my pad collection to most of them. Maybe not. Okay, a lot of them. So what I like to do is kind of give a comparison on the Verite for, you know, how the different pads affect the sound, because they do make quite a bit of difference. The ones I got on here right now are the BE2 Suede, which the BE2 is like kind of like for a while it was the special pad, but then I think he has put it on the website now. And these are the Suede ones, so they're the same thickness, but they're a little bit smoother in the treble. So I might do a video on that. Because also, like, I can do some comparisons for measurements so people can kind of see that as well, even though my rig is not accurate at all. The other thing that I'm really getting into these days is tube amplifiers.
Mm.
especially with the Verite. Like it's I don't know if this is true necessarily, but I in my experience for high impedance dynamic driver headphones like
Hmm.
the ADX 5000 and the
Yeah.
ZNF headphones and HD 800 and HD 800S, they do so well with tube amplifiers.
Yeah.
A lot of them do really well with tube amplifiers, and more so I find than planar magnetics. But that's of course, like, I'm sure there's some synergy with some planars that do work really well, and I've heard many examples of really good systems that work well together with planars. But just my experience lately has been more along the lines of dynamic driver headphones and tube amplifiers, and
Yeah.
I want to kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit more on that stuff. At the moment, though, I'm just working on a quick comparison for portable sources,
Yeah.
portable audio. It's I find it a little bit ironic because we're not really going anywhere these days.
Yeah.
But in the future when things open up again and
Yeah.
everybody's running around,
That's
maybe there'll be a rush for portable stuff.
It's an interesting point. Like, I think so many people have just, like, been able to focus on what's their desktop situation like
Yeah,
at the moment. Yeah, like, even like the notion of the laptop right now is kind of like not that relevant.
Yeah,
I
actually, I
do.
just got one of those like Surface things, and I find it so much
Yeah.
more useful than an actual laptop.
Mm,
Especially for you put Rune on it, and it's great.
yeah. I do find, like, DAPs though. Like, this is the Astel and Kern SA 700. Just great to
Yeah,
use as sources. So, like, just like chuck it into line out, plug it into sort of the amp that's here at the desk, and just kind of just
yeah.
hit the wheel on it. I think they're really handy sources to have.
It's funny because like I think most people when they're buying a DAP or even I was at one of them was that I was comparing was the SR15. Uh,
Yeah.
but when people are buying that stuff, I think a lot of the idea behind it is to use it as a DAP. But I imagine like
Mm,
just to use it portably. But I imagine in the future that's all we'll need because headphones are getting more and more easy to drive these days. There's
yeah.
some headphones still that are coming out that are pretty power hungry, like the Head Audio headphone. Some of the crazy high end stuff is still fairly power hungry, but most
Yeah.
headphones these days, even the high end stuff, you don't need much more than a little DAP, iBasso DX220, something like that,
Certainly
and
not.
and I think a lot of people are kind of missing that use case of just using it with their computer
Yeah.
as well. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting.
The Stellias up here. I may have taken them out of the house a couple of times
Yeah,
with the DAP, and that was like a real treat yourself moment.
yeah.
The supplied cables though,
Oh no.
they're not portable. A nice little kind of find was realizing that the Metze cables work with the
It's
Stellia.
3.5 millimeter, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. So I've got one of the 2.5 balanced connectors for the cables from Metze Audio.
Oh,
which
I
is
see.
just-
Okay.
Yeah, which is just like absolute gem to use with the Stellia
Yeah.
and a
Yeah.
DAP and a balanced DAP.
That's if there's one thing Meze has nailed, it's the look and feel of things.
Oh,
So
like,
much.
just like nothing else. And look,
Yeah.
and that if that makes you feel better about
Yeah.
the way that you interact with the product and like with music, I mean, power to you, power to them. I mean,
Yeah.
that's great.
It's why I don't think that the Empyrean is a bad choice. I think it's actually a great choice because it is one of the
I
few
agree.
headphones that nails build and comfort to the
Yeah.
degree that it does, right? Like, yes,
Yeah.
it's expensive, but
Yeah.
man, as if it isn't ever comfortable. So
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
it's I would never put that away in a box either. I would always just leave that sitting out there and just being
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm getting some ROI just looking at these right now.
Actually, I had a question for you about that.
Yeah.
When I mean, right now maybe not so much because everybody's kind of isolated at home. But like, if you have people come over and they see your wall and your audio setup, what kind of reactions do you get?
Just like you can people have more than one pair of headphones for the most part. I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, it is possible.
But it's I guess for the ones who don't necessarily know that you're
Yeah.
into this as much as you are, like for me, I often get that sort of like almost incredulous look where it's like, wait, you do this? What? This is a thing?
Yeah.
So-
It's peculiar, but like, everyone's into something, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I thought about this while I was writing my review for the Stellia.
Hmm.
Um, People will drop, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5K on a watch, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
that's a pretty standard thing to do, to buy an expensive watch. And I would say that more people are passionate about music than they are about telling the time. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
like,
And more
for
people
me,
are
I
passionate about music than headphones.
yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And so, like, people just don't really think much further than sort of their big box kind of, AV retailer when it comes to headphones. And they're sort of,
Hmm.
have latent awareness of, like, Beats or Sennheiser or Bose, and I think that's kind of the ceiling for it, and that's where their music experience is kind of capped at. And so
Yeah.
people are like, oh, so you review headphones, so like Bose, am I right?
Right.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, not really. They've got their time and place, but you can do better. You can do better.
So what's then the solution to getting more people? Is it putting more of these boutique kind of things into the limelight or front and center in from a marketing standpoint, or is it more online awareness, just kind of spreading the word more, or what do you think needs to happen to change some of that perspective?
Little bits of everything, mate.
Hmm.
So like, marketing's all about nudges. Like,
Hmm.
what are the things that are going to kind of nudge you towards a decision? Like, some of those are, I guess, reviewers, endorsement, having seen some ads about it, knowing about what the product story behind that brand is, or like, just seeing, content about it. So it's a combination of lots of things. But I think for the longest time, high-end manufacturers have spoken to audiophiles only, because they are like,
Yes.
that's kind of like, that's our bread and butter. That's the kind of the market that we need to court. We need to make you want to choose an Odyssey over a Hi-Femin or something like that.
Hmm.
Whereas, you look at like what Drop is doing, say, for example, and they're sort of, I would sort of argue that the HD6XX of
Hmm.
the last sort of few years has probably done sort of more for audiophilia and sort of, I guess, sort of, helping spread that than kind of, any other product. So that was like a
Yeah.
big bet from Sennheiser and then Mass Drop at the time, which is probably sort of, paid dividends and helped probably get a lot more people into this hobby than anything else.
Because that's the stepping stone as well. I mean, we were talking about that earlier with Grado, but for a lot of people
Yeah.
these days, I think it is the HD6XX. And then once they're there, it's like, what else is
What
there,
else?
and what is the next kind of thing?
Yeah. And look, I think if anyone's got an HD6XX and they're like saying what else, I'm like, just chill out, enjoy them. They're an incredibly good pair of headphones, and
Never look at
you'll
the internet again.
honestly, like, I joke about it so often, just take the
Yeah.
blue pill, get out, get out. But look, of all the things you could do, there are worse hobbies you could have than something that helps you just enjoy your music incredibly well, discover new music.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to speakers, and look, I'm into speakers as well. There's such better value than
Oh
speakers.
yeah.
It's like, yeah,
You didn't
just
spend any money in the room, or
yeah.
less
Well,
money in the room at least.
I, I started doing that. I've got a couple of absorbent panels here, and you can't see kind of the rest of it here.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get the room working as well as a pair of headphones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful that the I'm of two minds about this, because on the one hand, it
Mm,
seems like headphones, high-end headphones, the price is going in the wrong direction
mm,
for like the crazy high-end stuff. But then the positives
yeah,
that come from this is that a lot of the really nice, like well-performing headphones are coming in at lower price points as well. So you do see
yeah,
stuff like the HD6XX coming in, and then
yeah,
even like in the like what used to be kind of like top tier kind of flagship quality has now come into more modest price, like for example something like the Hi-Femin Sundara, or honestly even
mm,
the Ananda here.
yeah,
Like there's a lot of that stuff where I think maybe traditionally it would have been like between $1,000 and $2,000. I say traditionally, like maybe 5 years ago.
yeah, yeah,
And now that stuff's, that kind of performance, that kind of detail, that kind of tonality, all that stuff is coming in at much lower price tags, that it is becoming a little bit more accessible. And so I would love to see, while while on the high end things are going in a scary
Mm,
direction for
mm.
pricing, I would love to see more pickup for these kinds of, let's say, sub $1,000 headphones. I'd love
Yeah,
to see
totally.
that being more like, I guess, celebrated, or not just celebrated, but like highlighted, I guess, by the rest of the
I
market, so
agree.
that
The
you know,
Sandaras are an incredible package. I think pound for pound, they're one of the best choices you could actually
yeah,
make. And
yeah,
when you look at, I guess, sort of the what THX technology has done to amplification, like,
you can get a whole
arguably
setup, yeah, for very little these days.
arguably the problem of headphone amplification has largely been solved.
Yeah,
I guess, and the rest just comes down to what kind of flavor do you want, what kind of build do you want, what kind of inputs and outputs are important. But
mm-hmm.
any of those THX amps and something like a Sendari or one of the Sennheiser 6XX series, and you can pretty much tap out.
Yeah, yeah. We were talking about this earlier with the wireless stuff, but I mean, do
Mm,
you think that um, it is the idea of features, whether it's wireless or ANC or whatever,
mm.
uh, obscuring too much the other benefits that exist with headphones of any, regardless of the price, to the point where when people are potentially buying headphones now, um, they look first at the features and second at whether or not it's going to have good sound quality.
Yeah, well, I guess sort of when people know that you're a headphone reviewer, they're going, "What's a good pair of noise canceling headphones?" And I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah.
mm, "Do you want to
No,
do you want to do you want to cancel noise or do you want to listen to music?" Because I think
yeah.
they're two very separate questions. So let's
Yeah.
let's start there and then work backwards.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, yes, I think I guess kind of the feature and spec wars at a consumer big box level is probably taking up most of the bandwidth of, I guess, like mass market conversation.
And yeah. And but I mean that's conversation is the right term here because I think it it requires a bit of a change in conversation around what the point of high end of nice headphones is. Well, I
Mm,
think it might require like to the point of large scale kind of like attitude shifts, so that we're no longer looking for the features and we're instead looking for the thing that's going to that's going to generate that emotional connection with the music like you were talking about.
yeah, yeah. Well, it doesn't. It's not a difficult thing to do. Like, I think it's just going to have to take sort of a manufacturer to you know go about doing that in the right way. I mean,
Hmm.
vinyl. Like, look at vinyl sales. Like, they've gone
Yeah, that's a
past
good point.
more people buy records than CDs these days.
Yeah.
Um, People are looking to do things in a more sort of deliberate, considered way, than what they've kind of you know used to be doing. And I guess sort
Hmm.
of as we've all had to sort of withdraw kind of inwards and sort of stay home these last couple of months. We're seeing like people like making sourdough bread and like doing all this kind of stuff that was probably not on their consideration set a long time ago. And I
Hmm.
think probably a lot more people are sort of certainly into music discovery at the moment. So there's an easier way to sort of dig deeper into kind of music enjoyment, and you can just you know whack a good pair of cans on your head, and you'll be amazed at the difference.
Yeah. Um, we're just over an hour, and before we get into some Q&A here with the
Mm,
chat, I want to ask you just a couple questions about some of the reviews that you've written, and I want to
yeah,
get your take on what your like if you had to pick like favorite review to write,
hmm,
right, or favorite
yeah,
headphone, not just to write, but like to be able to do a review about in the
yeah.
last like 6 months. What would that have been?
I recall really enjoying writing about the Stellia.
Yeah.
It's just such a ridiculous like headphone. I'm like, all right, so I've got to sit down and sort of really make people think whether they want to sort of depart with. It's like 4,000 plus Australian dollars,
Oh yeah.
and it's just such an ostentatious product. Like everything about it, from like the leather that sort of sits on the outside of the cups to the
Yeah.
absolutely everything about it. And the sound is just like, it just puts this stupid smile on your head. That was a really easy review to write and a really enjoyable product to review, just because everything about it is just dialed up to 11. So
Easy to get excited about.
yeah, that was a really easy review to write. I remember it
Yeah.
just kind of wrote itself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think the Stellia. probably kind of stood out in that regard. I think the ADX 5000 we're talking about earlier was a pretty easy one to write, just because it was just the product experience was just like so cohesive and well packaged that you kind of get a sense about what it's, and you start to write about the sort of experience. Some are harder. Some
Yeah,
products
that was
are,
going to be my next question. What's the challenging
yeah.
one?
You know, probably ones that, like, it's a crowded marketplace out there. Like to be honest, and like especially like, you know, some smaller IEM brands that sort of pop up and like, hey, we thought you guys might be interested in this, so, you know, tell us what you think. I'm like, cool. Well, look, yeah, you know, relative to everything else at this price, you know, you've got a lot of options. So I've got to sort of, review this on its relative merits. And then sometimes you just need to be very honest, because, you know, like, you know, you haven't necessarily heard enough in a particular field before. I got the opportunity to review a pair of CIEMs earlier this year from a Polish manufacturer called Crafties, and, you know, necessarily they're a difficult thing to get into because of, I guess, sort of, you know, the need to get molds made, etc., etc., etc. So I don't have a bank of experience when it comes to reviewing CIEMs relative to one another. So I had to make sure I was coming at it from the angle of what's it like to experience having CIEM sort of made from the ground up, and what are they like sort of relative to everything else? What can you come to expect? So I think, you know, you have a particular sort of level of experience across the board, or sort of within sort of different areas. So I guess sort of, you know, framing everything correctly is important as well.
Yeah, well, definitely. So with that, I mean, I'd want to turn it over to some of the questions from the chat. I don't know if you had a chance to read some of it yet, but first of all, anybody who's watching, if you guys want to dump your questions in right now, in case I saw some people asking questions earlier and we probably just we've missed them. So if you want to reiterate,
I get carried away.
No, I do too.
Awesome cat. So let me introduce. Let me introduce the cat. He's very tired right now. His name's Potato.
I love that you can just pick up the whole.
He's a very chilled out dude. He just kind of likes to sit here all day while I listen to music, and he's very well behaved. He's a really friendly dude, and I think I can easily say that a cat is the best upgrade you can get for your system. If you're sitting down and you want to just listen to music and enjoy it, having a cat nearby is really rad.
Yeah,
isn't it, Tatey? So that's that's Potato.
I now need to get a cat for my system here.
I'll tell you what, Potato was a rescue cat, so was his brother Wheezy, and rescue catteries, they're all empty. There's no cats left at the moment because everyone's adopting them, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's
right
interesting.
now. But yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about cats. Yeah, he's a good dude.
Let's go through some of these questions here. I don't see any recent ones, but here's one. What did you think of the Head Audio headphone? I know that there was a review published, but did you get a chance to actually listen to that one?
I haven't actually listened to that. So Levin from Headfonia, he got to review that. It's one of those products that's, you know, more different than anything else out there at the moment, and I think just because it looks so different, I really just kind of want to try it relative to everything else. It just looks so big and bulky and different, and everyone just talks about how it's sort of neutral and transparent, and it is. Have you spent some time with it?
Yeah, I actually did get a chance to review it, and I'm probably responsible for why some people think that it's the giant killer and is the it's the you know, the hype train and whatnot. But I really do think, I mean, assuming that it's driven properly, because it requires so much power, I really do think it is a new benchmark there at what I think it's like $1,800 US. And in my mind, like when I heard it, I got a chance to spend actually quite a bit of time with it. To me, it was it was enough. It was good enough where I thought now things need to change for pricing, the way that manufacturers are pricing their equipment, because it feels like everybody is, when they release a product, it feels like because it's their baby, they want to release it at a higher price because they think it's worth more without necessarily taking all the competition into consideration. And the headphone is one where it basically looks at everything else that's around that $1,800 price mark, or $1,900 or whatever it is, and just flat out beats it for not for necessarily everything, but for certain things like detail and especially in the treble, it's remarkably good. So I really liked it. Yeah.
You've got, okay, consider me intrigued. That sounds like that's right up my Strasser.
Yeah, it sounds like to me at least, the short version that I think is, it sounds kind of like a Focal Utopia. If a Focal Utopia and like a, in like LCD4 form, so it's a heavier kind of thing.
I'm just looking at, when you say anyone says LCD4, I'm like, all right, I just automatically just want to start stretching my neck.
Yeah, those are, I think 500 grams should be the stop, and that thing is like 700 grams, so it's definitely too heavy, but
So Brian has just mentioned that he can see an Asgard 3, and Brian would be correct. So I've got the Asgard 3 multi-bit, came in last week from the guys at Shit. I need to spend probably about 2 or 3 weeks just solely listening to that on my desktop, but as I do with anything, you take it out of the box, you plug it in, you check that it works, and work it does. It is really stupid powerful. Super impressive so far.
Remind me, what is the Asgard 3? Is it tube or solid state?
It's solid state, so that's that guy over there.
So I'm thinking of the Lear, that's the tube. The Lear 3 is the...
That's right. It's got a 6SN7 poking at the top from memory. So so the Asgard 1 and 2 were all Class A amps. Right. I owned an Asgard 2 for a while. I could keep my coffee warm just by sitting on top of it. Right. So this is now Class AB. It's all Class A up to 500 milliwatts, which is basically most power that most headphones will ever use. Does get stupid hot, not like burn your hand hot, but you'll know it's on, and really impressive. I mean, it feels like a big chunky piece of audio equipment, so it's exactly double the price of the Magni, which is a extremely competent $99 package, but you're getting a lot of metal and you're getting a lot of power for when you double your outlay.
Right. So it is like quite a bit more powerful than the Magni.
Oh, it's around 5 watts into 32 or maybe 16 ohms. Yeah. It is certainly like a lot of watts.
And is this balanced or single-ended or
single-ended only?
Okay.
So single-ended in, single-ended pre-out as well. So I've given it a whirl just to power my desktop amp. I've got a little baby Burson Bang to power my Kefs on my desk, which is my latest little treat yourself COVID package. And this guy has the multi-bit DAC card in it as well, which USB only, but it's really, really impressive so far. Like, it's more power than you'll probably ever need. It's well packaged, and look, I think one thing reviewers don't talk about enough is knob feel. And
what a great term.
There's actually a good YouTube channel. They've been inactive for a while, but it's called Knob Feel, and they talk about the nuances and tactility of knobs on electronic gear. But honestly, if you're going to be sitting all day and it's going to be powering your headphones or changing the volume on your power amp or your powered monitors or whatever, having a nice tactile, I guess, sort of window into your gear is important. And it's
for
a great
knob feel, do you prefer stepped? Okay, I can't believe I'm asking this question, but do you prefer stepped or do you prefer smooth?
Do I like a step knob?
Yeah.
That's what you're asking. I do, actually. The hands down the best volume input I've ever had was on the the Ari's headphone amplifier,
Hmm.
which I reviewed I think late last year, which is a really boutique US manufacturer, and it it had relays in it, so you could hear the clicking, but absolute balance, like all the way down to the absolute lowest level. I think plugging in a pair of Campfire Andrometers and sort of going at 0, there was no
Right.
hiss, and that's when you can run into trouble with a powerful amp, is that you have that channel imbalance at sort of
Yeah.
super low levels. Um, and it wasn't like a really annoying click on the relays. It was a nice little subtle digga 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 digga, just to let you know it was there, and it was working. So for the most part, I like stepped. My Quest dial has a regular potentiometer,
Yeah.
which is also motorized, which is nice. So I've got the remote for it here, so I can make
Oh yeah.
it go up, make it go down.
Yeah. Nice. Um, just see a few more questions here. I have okay. So Jeep Adventures asks any thoughts on the Rad Zero. Have you had a chance to hear the Rossen Audio Rad Zero?
I haven't. They look Larry. I my understanding is that the Rad Zero is one of the Odyssey founders, and it's a
Yeah,
pretty
Rossen.
similar
Yeah.
looking, pretty
Um,
similar looking configuration.
yeah. So my take on it now, because I've actually had a chance to evaluate two of them. And it's the
Mm,
same headphone, but you get to customize the colors and stuff. So my first on it is
yeah.
that they're colorful. The second is
Mm,
they're heavy. They
yeah.
There is a little bit of clamp force, but that's been improved. So
Hmm.
the first run that they did, they were a little bit clampy and they were a bit heavy. Then the second run they did, they're quite a bit lighter and they're not as clampy, right? So it's actually I think lighter than some of the Odyssey equivalents.
Mm,
So that helps. But I also did find that there was a little bit of unit variation there as far as the sound
hmm.
quality went. The first unit that got a chance to hear was fantastic. The
Yeah.
second unit that I heard, I felt was not as good.
Mm,
So I don't know if that's been fixed. I don't know where they're at right now as far as consistency for that. But I think that's something also that, especially for more boutique planar magnetic headphone manufacturers, that's something that just is a thing. Like you have to contend with. Even Odyssey deals with uh, sometimes unit variation. I know certainly for
yeah.
the LCD4, right, for the higher end ones that they don't make a ton of, unit variation is an issue. So
What's your take on the let's call it the rainbow squiggly kind of, I guess, kind of color scheme they got going on? What do you think?
with the Rad Zero,
Yeah.
um, so the story there's a story. I don't know how true this is, but apparently
Mm,
Brie Larson has one because she
yep.
liked the way that the colors looked. uh,
Well,
yeah,
you know what? If that gets people into high-end audio, great.
yeah, exactly. For me, I prefer the look of something like the ZMF Verite. I like kind of the
Yeah.
more kind of subtle, muted kind of. My go-to aesthetic is like sleek yet understated. That's what I
Hmm.
hope for in everything.
Yeah.
The Focal headphones, I think they all look fantastic.
Mm,
So for me, it's a little bit too flashy
yeah.
for some of the designs. But with that said, there are other designs that they've done because you can customize them a little bit that
Mm,
are a little bit more to my taste. So there's one in particular I it was the second one actually that I reviewed, and it looks amazing because it's more this kind of like more earth tones and that kind of stuff in it, and
yeah.
so
Yeah.
the aesthetic is way nicer for that one.
Hmm.
Then it's funny, the one that I actually did get a chance to did a full review on was one of the earlier ones, and it happened to be the graffiti one, which was
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
super colorful and everything. So I
Yeah.
like more the more understated look.
Yeah.
um
I think I have a type, and I think that type is wood.
yeah, yeah,
From a quick glance over there, I think I just kind of
yeah.
like stuff that's made by humans with hands.
Yeah, fair enough. Got another question here. Do you guys think that Bluetooth will ever develop to the point that it will rival wired connections for sound quality? Well, we were talking about that earlier, but yeah, I'll let
Yeah.
you take that. Yeah.
Well, look, we're almost there. I think we're so close. Like if it's just about the ability to, transmit let's just say 44.1 Red Book as the, as the standard. Like, it's so close. Like, so yes, like I think it's going to be, fewer than a couple of years, and we'll be, at absolute lossless territory. So I think it would be naive of me to say that no, it wouldn't.
I tend to think that that's true as well. But the one consideration that uh, will need to be taken into account is the putting that equipment into the headphone. How that gets handled is going to be the big question. And it's interesting seeing now, like Hi-Fi Man's Deva headphone with the little kind of
Dongle,
clip-on piece to the side. That seems to be their solution. Whereas with the Mobius, it's a more internal kind of thing. So that will still need to be figured out by whatever manufacturer is doing it. But the actual transmission itself for Bluetooth, I think, is already basically there. I think maybe this is going to be a larger challenge with once we start talking about some of the crazy flagships. Could you get a wireless Bluetooth Sesvara or something like that, or Utopia? I don't know, but I think eventually it's not gonna, the limitation isn't going to be in the Bluetooth signal. It's going to be in the implementation.
Yeah, totally. And look, generally, I would always say that the most important piece of music of audio equipment is the one that you use all the time and each day. Yeah. And for me, when I am, commuting, I fly a lot for work. The Ear Studio ES100, I use it all the time.
Oh yeah,
all the time.
And the little app is great for that as well. You can EQ to your heart's desire.
You know what? Generally, hardware manufacturers suck at software. Like Sennheiser, Chord, they make terrible apps. This ES100 app is the goods. It's so
full featured.
Look, it's so small. I lost it. I lost one somewhere in my apartment, and like it's literally here somewhere. I bought another one. It's that good. So yeah, I generally use that every day. That's Bluetooth. I rely on it, and it's perfect for travel. So look, it's good enough to use every day.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, got some more here. Best top of the line headphones for metal music. I'm considering Verite Closed or Stelia. Ooh. Well, it's funny because Verite Closed and Stelia are probably the best closed back headphones in general. Yeah. And I don't think that either of them is all that bad. I think both of them would be pretty darn good for metal. I don't know. What do you think?
For metal, I haven't had the privilege of listening to the Verite Closed. So they're both beryllium drivers.
Verite is like beryllium coated. It's I think the Stelia is like pure solid beryllium. I think that's the difference.
I've listened to a lot of metal on these Stelias, and I can tell you that it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I actually was listening to a bit of Opeth on them a couple of days ago.
Hey, that's my favorite band.
That's your jam. Hey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like so many of my test tracks are Opeth. Like Harvest is just like strings sound like real strings.
All of Damnation. Damnation. But all of the Damnation record is well recorded as well. Okay. Yeah. Probably not well recorded, but it's well mastered at least.
Yeah.
The newer stuff, the recording's not that great.
Yeah. So I like a bit of Opeth, and that was a good time on the Stelia. So look, I could definitely recommend them, and they do a lot more than metal just well. So
they do. They're very versatile.
They're extremely versatile. I think it just comes down to the value equation for you at the end of the day. Yeah. And are you okay, like, with the way that they look and the way that they make you feel? I certainly felt conspicuous when I took them into the office once or twice. Yeah.
See, I've felt that way when I took the Ananda Bluetooth. So like wireless version of the Ananda, which I don't know if you can see it back here, but and I walked around with it out in public, and I was like, just because I wanted to see what kind of reactions I get, and it's you feel really dumb.
The stupidest looking headphones. I'm actually going to go and put them on. The Grado Whites.
All right,
like,
sure.
They look so dumb. I won't be able to hear you for
that's okay.
But...
I do want to let you guys know that my preference for metal music is also planar magnetic. So that's just me, the way I like it.
Working like a couple of radars.
Oh, that's great.
So, look, something to keep in mind deciding to buy these. They sound good though.
Wait, so is that closed back? Or
No,
how?
they're open.
No, okay.
They're open back, so
Uh,
they do have a small opening there and a very
I see.
subtly embossed Grado
Right.
logo on the outside of the cups as well.
That's cool. Um, yeah, okay, so let's see. I think I saw another question, but I totally glossed over it. Um, let's see. Is there any other headphone that you think would be ideal for metal music?
Metal music, Grados
I'm
are great
looking.
with metal. Like I love listening to metal on Grados. They're just so fast and
Hmm.
vivid and exciting. Um, AC/DC is one of my favorite bands, and I love listening to AC/DC on the Grado PS500Es. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I think the value equation on Grado pretty much kind of caps out around the RS2E level and the PS500E level, and beyond that, you're basically kind of buying more wood or
Right.
more metal and probably slightly more soundstage. But yeah, they're pretty much as good as it gets, I think, when it comes to sort of metal excitement. Let's put it that way.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Forwardness. Yeah. Um,
yeah, very much.
okay, here's a question from the chat from L.
Mm.
Levine. Have you guys tried any DOS DAC? How would you just? I assume it's non-oversampling. How would you describe the sound difference compared to OS Delta Sigma DACs? Is that your jam?
Now, help me sort of break down what's happening sort of technically there.
So from my understanding here, Delta Sigma is going to be the summed ones and
Oh yeah,
non-oversampled.
okay,
Yeah,
so versus like a relay,
yeah.
right?
Like there's, I think,
R2,
yeah, exactly. Like you have
yeah.
what's the one from Shit Audio, Yggdrasil, and some of those other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard a bunch of them. I've spent some time with a Ragnarok Yggdrasil stack. Like, it's not really helpful of me to say it sounded good, but it just sounded really fucking good.
Hmm.
The Asgard at the moment, that's got an R2R card in it. Um, obviously it doesn't have the benefits of, I guess, kind of, the power supply and all the other goodies that sort of come with a proper standalone DAC. But yeah, like I haven't spent enough time to sort of really sort of dig into it and kind of the nuances. I guess, generally speaking, people say they sound more organic or sort of feel more natural. And yes, while they
Yeah.
certainly measure sort of more poorly, just in terms of,
Yeah.
out and out sort of fidelity and noise and so forth, I guess what people say is that it makes it sort of feel closer to what actual kind of analog music sounds like.
I think that's one of the things with source measurements,
Mm,
where stuff with discrete components. This is not specifically with R2R versus Delta
mm,
Sigma, or even like multi-bit versus Delta Sigma. Someone was saying there, um, but when you have stuff with discrete components in general, it's not going to measure as well as something with like op amps, for example. You see that with the Magni 3 Plus versus the Magni Heresy, where the Magni Heresy is using op amp. As far as I understand, Magni Heresy is the one that's using op amps, and that
yeah.
one measures better.
Mm,
And I think the point of that, one of the points of that was to just see, okay, how, like, let's see if we can make something that we know is going to measure really well.
yeah.
So
Yeah. And look,
unless I got those two mixed up, it's one was specifically op amps and one was discrete components. But
yeah.
in any
And
case,
look,
yeah,
I thought that was an interesting play from Shit, because like there's been like a real kind of like, I guess, not kind of like I guess kind of schism in sort of personal
hmm,
high-end audio, but I guess sort of like there's been a real kind of conversation around objectivism lately,
yeah, yeah,
and sites like Audio Science Review, etc. I guess sort of measuring and posting, and Shit really came to the table and said, okay, here's our take on an
yeah.
out and
I
out
love it.
kind of like absolutely purist thing. You guys want to bitch about it? Look, we can do it. It's not
Yeah,
kind of our philosophy, and we've built this, completely other one. That's kind of our take on it. But if you guys want it, here we've done it, and that's kind of like a reverse kind of halo effect for the rest of their lineup. And
yeah,
hats off to them for doing that.
yeah. I agree. I think it was the smartest move that they could have done because,
Mm,
you know, uh, it now puts them in the arena of, at the very top of the arena of, like, JDS Atom and like all the other ones that score really well in those metrics, right? So
Yeah, totally. And look, if someone said, "Look, I've got $100 to spend on an amp," I'm like, "It's what color do you like?"
yeah.
Basically, like
Yeah, yeah.
everything will perform audibly transparently. We'll
Hmm.
be able to power everything as well as you need to, depending on, like, unless you've got something
For
like,
most, yeah.
Sosvaras or something
Yeah,
like that. What's important for you in terms of connections? How much room do you have on your desk? And
yeah,
that's, it's
yeah.
it's a nice problem to have. Like, when, like, I often ask the question, is amplification a solved problem as far as human hearing goes at the moment? For the most part, it might be. Just like,
Yeah.
what kind of flavor do you want?
Yeah, yeah. Especially with, even more recently, the THX 789, I think, is dropped in price. I think it's
By
now
$100,
two.
and
Yeah, I think
then
it's two
they've
ninety
got
nine now.
yeah, and they've got a new one coming in, a baby one, which is
Yeah.
single-ended only. I don't think they've put a price tag on it yet, but look, it's got to have a one at the start, right? Like, you'd think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
let's watch this space.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. I made this statement before, but I tend to think, like, if you're gonna get a amplifier, like, go big or go little. Like, you can,
Yep.
with what you can get, that's like really inexpensive right now.
Mm,
You
mm.
know.
Yeah, I bought myself an end game amplifier, which is
Yeah, yeah.
the Quest style CMA 600i that I mentioned before. Um, it obviously sounds extremely competent, like a well implemented solid state amplifier can do. It's got 2 watts a channel at 32 ohms. It's great for doing lots of things. It's got an analog input, so I can use external DACs and sort of test those. It's got
Hmm.
its own internal AK4490 with coax, USB, and optical. It's got XLR out, but it's also got two 6.3 single-ended outs, which is great for A/B testing different headphones. So that's my end game kind of big amp, because it does everything I need to. It's the heart of my desktop system.
Right. I think that's that's the other thing that me as, like, or just us as reviewers, when we're
Mm,
evaluating source gear, there's the trying to evaluate something based on sonic merits, but then
yeah,
it's at that second component that you thought of, that you were talking about before, where if it is the hub of your, like, the centerpiece for the rest of everything else, then
yeah,
suddenly the value there, it's a lot more important.
totally,
um,
totally.
yeah. Okay, last question here from the chat, and it's an important one. Uh, where does the law of diminishing returns begin with headphones, in your opinion? So I'll let you go with that one.
Diminishing returns. Okay, so just in terms of well, look, obviously we're talking in highly qualitative terms, but what am I going to be able to spend that's going to let me really, really, really enjoy my music? And, like, I'm going to have to say probably around the $500 mark. Like,
Interesting.
for most people, like, we've covered a few of those headphones today, so including the Sundara, the
Hmm.
HD 6XX, Great
Oh, sorry, are you
OR.
talking Australian dollars or US?
Oh God, the Australian dollar is doing extremely poorly at the moment. So look, So, how many of my dollary dues does that equate to? So
Did they officially
probably.
change the name to Dollary Dues?
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, it's amazing.
No, they ought to. But look, I
Yes.
think we took a bit of a hit lately. Um, yeah, but look, I would say probably around, you can do very, very well for the 500 USD mark.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and look, everything beyond that is, what are you chasing? What are you looking for in terms of, I guess, sort of a different combination of factors, or, doing one thing particularly well, or are you looking for a more luxury or sort of handcrafted experience?
Yeah.
But I think diminishing returns definitely apply really hard. There's a strong drop off after that 500 USD mark. For sorry, just to qualify that, Michael, for headphones.
Hmm. For me, it's I like to think of it as kind of like different tiers,
Yep.
where each tier has its own kind of benchmark. and then past the benchmark, there's significant drop off there for diminishing returns.
Yeah.
So like I think you mentioned the $500 mark. I mean the Sundara and the HD6XX and all those fall underneath that. And I think, you know, for those, so say you get 6XX and an amplifier and a DAC and you have your setup there, you know, that satisfies the under $500 bracket. I think then, you know, the next one that you got to go to is maybe like, you know, let's say $1,500 Hi-Fi Man Aria or something like that, right? There's a noticeable difference there when you go from one to the other, but you know, in between incrementally, nowhere near as much, right?
Definitely.
And then the same thing for like the crazy high end stuff, like the Sysvara and the LCD4 and Utopia and all this. You know, incrementally between, not as much, but between them, like it starts to be noticeable,
There is a huge amount of difference between each of those tiers, and I think if just to answer the, I guess, sort of the question, and I guess, you know, sort of in terms of my responsibility for sort of, you know, viewers and how they make decisions with their money, and, you know, is this incrementally, is it going to make you enjoy your music, like, to the degree of the price difference? Not so much. But you know,
exactly.
they're definitely there if, you know, if you're determined to spend that much time with your headphones, that I would say spend a lot more time sort of, you know, working your way up. You know, don't sort of, you know, be in too much of a hurry to, you know, monkey bar swing your way towards end game super quickly, because, you know, just have fun.
Yeah. And the nice thing too is that a lot of this stuff retains its value. So you're not, like, especially if you buy, you know, products that you've done a lot of research on, and you know it's a good product that everybody else values as well, you know, you can sell that stuff for not too much less than what you bought it for. So
you can. And look, I kind of give myself a bit of a moral code of, you know, take 30% off, generally speaking. If you're selling like a 9.5 to 10 out of 10 quality piece of used gear, and that's generally the asking price that you should be looking for when you're stepping into a piece of used equipment as well.
Yeah, definitely. Anyways, on that note, we've been going here for about an hour and a half. Hour and 40 minutes. Okay, so we should probably.
No wonder I'm hungry.
Yeah. We should probably end it there. Listen, Matty, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and thanks so much for doing this.
No worries at all, and nice just to hang out and jam and talk about cans and COVID and all sorts of fun stuff. And, love to come back anytime. Let me know.
Yeah, we'll do. And for everyone watching, thanks for tuning in. We'll have this episode up as a podcast as well. So definitely, if you guys wanna, you know, listen to this while doing the dishes on your wireless headphones, definitely give the podcast a check. So we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, mate. Bye-bye.